Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the second half of Dr. Sandra Rose Michael's presentation. She's going to be introducing you to her co-presenter. I will give it to her here right now.
Okay. Aloha. Everybody still breathing? What if you could breathe in all the energy right now? We have access to unlimited power, infinite intelligence, unconditional love. Choose to accept it. I'm not a kahuna for nothing. I'm going to share those tricks. Okay, so keep breathing and stay with us, please, because things got a little crunched with the scheduling, because I'm very, very happy that Chris Neville is here from down under the rabbit hole, down under from Oz, right? From Australia. And he works with BioPhotonics. He's vice president of product development. He's the top investigator, researcher, formulator for amazing, awesome products, for working with the epigenetics, the nutrigenomics, that highest potential of your DNA, and it's what we call the next gene narration. And so BioPhotonics is his company, and Clarity, and he's also an amazing healer himself. And we'll be talking about that Q-spa and sound, because he's an indigenous. He's studied with the indigenous. He's an amazing dig player. So I want you to please give a warm welcome to Chris Neville. He's a long way from home, but we're really glad he's here, and I think you'll really enjoy him.
Thank you.
Oh, you don't need that one. We will do Q&A after anybody who wants to talk. We're also in the agave room, and there'll be free samples too.
Good afternoon, and thanks very much for having me here. I'm really honored, to be perfectly honest. I'm going to share a little bit about Clarity. It came about, if I do a rewind, when it started to look at health and well-being, it probably went back to when I was a 7-year-old boy watching Popeye eat his spinach and thinking, I've got to eat my vegetables. But the thing about it is that it progressed from, having a lifetime of sports and moving into even becoming a Green Beret later on in my life as well, to understand health and well-being. But I also wanted to understand what some of the First Nations were doing way back when that actually had a benefit as far as health was concerned, not just from some of the herbs and the spices and elixirs that were developed many, many eons ago, but specifically I was interested in sound and resonance. I had the great fortune of being introduced to the didgeridoo by a dear friend of mine, over 20 years ago, and it opened up a new chapter for me with not only understanding sound and resonance for the ears and entertainment and, shaking your booty, but it was also about how it could be used for healing. I was the first Western musician to record with the Tibetan monks playing the didgeridoo, with some other fellow musicians playing the cello and the shakuhachi, the flute. And part of that was when we played at the World Peace Concert, and there was something about what sound does and resonance does, and we know there's music for bringing about a certain state of consciousness and awareness, but I was also interested in resonance that led to a transformation, not just in feeling better, but at a true cellular regeneration level. So my company, which is actually based in Hong Kong, was more exploring the idea of photons and photonics, and the idea that there's an information exchange before a biochemical reaction. And so when I was contacted by the founder of Clarity, it was because they were looking at what appears to be a global concern. If there was something that you could change about your life right now, what would it be? And for many people, it's something regarding their health, or maybe their children's health. And so we looked at what the true causative nature for aging, sickness, and disease was. And we knew that it wasn't just a physical approach, it needed to be a resonant or an energetic approach as well. And so, when people think about the idea of a dis-ease, they obviously have a certain level of concern. Yet with the options and choices available today, there tends to be a little bit of confusion. There's conflicting data about should I, shouldn't I, and what about. And so we just hope that today can lead you to clarity, because you know, Robin, who I had the good fortune of being introduced to, had a vision herself. She came from, if you've ever seen a surfboard and the surfwear or the Aloha fashion, her dad started that, you know, many, many years ago. Walter and Philip Hoffman started a textile revolution in surfwear and fashion. And although she wasn't a surfer herself, her nephew was on the front page of every surf magazine ever, and he's a little dot, and there's this mega wave that he's riding, the biggest wave ever caught on camera. And she's a national champion as a horse rider, but she also had a passion about health, and the fact that her daughter was, you know, at college and looking to go into, eventually becoming a grandma. She thought, look at what the kids are having as choices today, and is that affecting the possibility of her grandchildren in the future? And so that was really her driving force and the passion. So she contacted me and said, you know, I'm interested in the green drink and this and that. And I said, you know what, stand in line with 50 others. You know, it wasn't exciting enough, because to me it wasn't about having a product. It was about, was it actually doing something that transformed the cell? So that way there was a better possibility. If you understand some of the challenges today with regard to, some of the chronic degenerative diseases right now, we've got an epidemic. And we've got an epidemic for a range of reasons, but truly you can just think in your own family unit or extended family, who has been affected by cancer or knows somebody? Like everybody in the room, you know. The amazing thing is that it's on the rise, and it's not just about the obvious, it's also about the invisible. And we're becoming more mindful about those things. Whether the statistics are just US-centric, you can take that and extrapolate that to global, because it is a global concern as well. So what we understood was that within the disease process, you can identify one common denominator. In fact, Time magazine, on the front page, identified that you could be talking about neurological diseases, you know, Alzheimer's and dementia. And we may think of it as a disease, but it's actually inflammatory. It's inflammation of the central nervous system in the brain. And we can talk about cardiovascular system, and cancer and any other disease really has at the fundamental level inflammation. So if inflammation is the causative effect, was there something that showed up physically that we could do about it? We thought about that, but we also understood that it was also about the genes and gene expression, but more importantly, the energetics, this coherence in the body that ancients understood about chi and ki, prana and life force, that it needed to be in flow. This toroidal field that we talk about, this chakric balance, needs to be part of the equation, or we're only looking at the door and not the hinges that actually swing it. And so that's where we went. But the other aspect is stress. Do you think today, who's more stressed today than were 10 years ago, right? Is life, the globe, kind of a little bit more unpredictable today than ever before? We won't go into politics, but it's like what we've got is a really interesting situation. And dis-ease, as we know, is about the dis-ease and the disharmony in our heart and also our gut and our brain. So this gut-brain axis is a very, very important thing to realign if we're truly going to look at addressing the causation of disease. And so whether it be post-traumatic stress and this emotional disturbance that's happened because of trauma or a brain injury, what we do know is that many of the neurotransmitters are actually created in the gut. And so if we don't have that, we have emotional and mental imbalance. And so we're looking at stress and inflammation as being truly the things that we need to look at. And, you know, stress is that invisible You know, it's like, oh, you look okay. It's like, I'm just a basket case, you know, really. There's sometimes the things that are going on that that aren't obvious. And so, you know, looking at some of the changes that are happening in the world today, we had to take a look at a holistic approach to developing products. And what we looked at was, how can we create a simple model that relates to everybody so we can take away the mystery of disease? And we came back with, you know, Never Be Sick Again by Raymond Francis. Is a fabulous book written, and it just demonstrated that really there are not thousands of diseases that we may think are diseases. You know, that if we simply look at the fact that a cell, if the cell gets what it needs on a daily basis and it eliminates what it doesn't need to support life, we have a really simple approach. And we call it one disease. And that one disease is a malfunctioning cell, but it actually has two causes. And the two causes are deficiency or toxicity. That to me kind of makes it unless you're a clinician and you can go into some of the biochemical pathways and all the rest, you go, I'm lost, so I'm in a state of confusion as Joe or Susie consumer. So we wanted to make it simple for them to understand that we are physical beings and energetic beings, and then how can we integrate that as a simple approach to life. And so we also looked at the 6 pathways that lead to the two causes. And those pathways, we know nutrition, you know, the deficiency or the toxicity within our nutrient intake, the foods we have. Physical deficiency or toxicity. We also understand that there's a genetic predisposition to our health and our health status, but also psychological, as I mentioned about stress, that sometimes not what you eat, but what's eating you. And this is what causes a disturbance in the biochemical pathways as well. And there's a lot of fabulous research going on about it. Medical, if we looked at that in terms of the pharmaceutical industry alone, but the broader medical industry, what we're looking at is an industry that hasn't taken, I believe, in my own opinion, all of the factors into consideration towards health. And I truly think that we need to revert to ancient ways in a way that acknowledges some of the energetic principles of the body, not just the physical cut and burn. And that's why when you look at iatrogenesis being the 3rd highest killer of people on the planet, most people haven't heard of that conditional disease. It's actually death by medical mishap. By following the directions on your pharmaceuticals, over 106,000 Americans die every year by following directions. That's a model that's out of balance. When we take globally, that's 1 million plus people that are dying following directions. Now, there aren't too many people that have overdosed from carrots or apples or kale, right? So what we've got is a real way. And then, of course, we look at toxins with... we could think about, as you know, as Dr. Sandra said, you know, the world's been fooked, right, by the Fukushima. But what we have is a man-made frequency epidemic as well. More Wi-Fi devices, cell phones, and a range of other towers that are going up, smart meters and the like. So we have to look beyond. I became interested in bioenergetics when I was actually an ambassador for a product that was based out of Germany, but the original science went back to Russia. The image on the left-hand side are actually cosmonauts in space, and they're using a device known as a prognos, where they would actually place this pen-like device on the end of their fingers and their toes every day, and it would measure the disturbance from the energetic flow in the body. Now, it was developed based on electrodermal mapping that they had done many years ago, and electrodermal mapping was a way for them to look at the electrical conductivity of the skin, and they actually found out that the Chinese meridian system existed. And it's like, science has now confirmed that pathway exists, so it must be real, right? That pathways that have been used for thousands of years. And it was exciting because a range of new technologies over the last 20, 30 years have come in so we can measure and monitor this energetic pathway disturbance or coherence that can be introduced. One of the main things that became a concern was when they first started sending astronauts into space, it wasn't, as we know, just about moving into anti-gravity. It was also the Schumann resonance and also this pulse of the Earth that actually has an effect on biochemistry. And so working with a couple of other scientists, we also took into consideration that what happens, and one of the scientists studied, or in fact was a consultant to NASA for 10 years. And she was a consultant because she wanted to look at nutrient transport in anti-gravity, in a zero gravity state. And so all of those factors needed to take into consideration. So the meridians are valid, they're real. We know that. But for the mainstream, it was also kind of poo-pooed, but science is taking a greater understanding of the energetics. So we've infused that understanding within the formulation that we're not just physical beings. Dr. Mile, as you know, with the DNA and some of the research around the DNA that obviously Dr. Glenn has done, we developed a range of products that truly, how can you take bioscalar and give it to the world without them necessarily going to a clinician? Yes, I believe going to a clinician is like going to a concert. I am listening to my favorite songs, but when I can't be with my musician, artist, friends, and getting that concert experience, I need to be able to go away and listen and experience that song that brings me joy. True? So this is what we developed. All of the products have actually got what we call Q-Set. Now it's just our proprietary name, Q for quantum, SET for signature enhancement technology. It's a way that we infuse Dr. Sandra's bioscalar technology into products, and that actually amplifies the benefit of the formulation. So you can actually have a formula, and I can give you that tomorrow, but what we have is a way of being able to introduce this scalar fields into the body in a practical daily approach. And there's a range of different products that we develop, but the main thing about it was the commencement was with Calibrate. Calibrate was developed for kids as a starting point. Why? Because if you look at some of the Red Cross research on even the placenta and the umbilical cord, they're finding 250 plus man-made chemicals before the baby's born. You know, like what are we doing to our next generation if that's the starting point? So that was Robin's motivation with Clarity. It's based on the fields of epigenetics and nutrigenomics, which is really about nourishing the body, but also certain compounds that have an ability to affect gene expression. And that became our calling card. The products are GMO-free, kind of handy, really. It's vegan, gluten-free, etc. But it's providing broad-based nutrients to the body that have also been bioscalar enhanced. There's chaga mushrooms and curcuminoids and a range of other pretty cool things that have been brought together. But this image is really about why it was developed, because most people, I call it the battle of the berries, you know, oh, you've got to have these berries because they're high in antioxidants, and everybody's going, yeah, we've got to have that. And so we've had this battle of the berries for the last 20 years. Anybody notice that? And it's been an incredibly beneficial thing for the market to become more and more aware of these nutrients that can help the body overcome oxidative stress, but it's not enough. So this is what we refer to as a distinction about clarity. The idea of concern and confusion, the confusion lies in the fact that most people have been sold the idea of secondary antioxidants. The antioxidants that are in your foods and your berries, and they're incredibly important, we know it. But they are your flavonoids, your vitamins, your minerals, your carotenoids. But what's more powerful, more potent to address this oxidative stress and inflammation is a pathway of gene expression where the body makes its own antioxidants. Most people don't know about, there's two really different types of antioxidants, those made by the body or from your diet. So this is what we're focused on as primary antioxidants. These are SOD, superoxide dismutase, catalase and glutathione peroxidase. They're naturally produced by the body. They just simply need to be switched on. And these compounds that have been based on research and science of nutrigenomics are about switching on the genes that are coded to produce this in your body naturally. Why this is so important in clinical nutritional research is because this happens inside the cell. So if oxidative stress and inflammation that causes the upstream effect of disease or dysfunction of that malfunctioning cell and the system of the body is happening there, that shows up as that condition, we're addressing it before it starts. We're addressing it when it starts. And that's why it became so important, because we can get to the source of inflammation rather than dealing with signs and symptoms, which tends to be part of what we've been educated to think. Now, these crazy little characters here are just a great way for the average person to be able to understand the distinction between primary antioxidants and secondary antioxidants. Now, we may think of secondary antioxidants from our diet as being the external source, or what is referred to as exogenous. And these are the antioxidants that are brought into the body. So we have this cell that's under siege from toxins, and it's causing inflammation. So you can see the tower, and it's got a fire going on. So this is about inflammation and a fire approach to explaining the simplicity of what's happening at a complex level. So the fireman is the nutrient that's going into the body, and Fireman Jim has to travel all the way up to the stairs to get to the fire. So we have this absorption discussion. Nutrigenomics, on the other hand, is actually shifting the conversation, whereby we're not looking at trying to deliver an antioxidant to the body. What we're doing is we have endogenous approach, or the internally sourced or derived antioxidants. So you can see the fireman doesn't have his bucket of water with his primary antioxidants. He has a little button that he pushes. He knows all about inflammation, and he activates the genes, pushes that alarm, and the body does multiple things all at once. As soon as that alarm goes on, and as soon as it's switched on, what we have is the alarm system. What does the alarm do? It's warning, warning. Something is about to happen, or is happening. And so you can see that little candle. That little candle is inflammation before it becomes a raging inferno, the source, right? Something is triggering a mechanism. So in addition to that, what you notice is the sprinkler system. The bucket of water is already in the building. It's just already been produced. And this is the idea of antioxidants that the body is making at the source of oxidative stress before it becomes compounded over time. Make sense? And so it's just a way for consumers that we're finding to be a really fabulous way of being able to understand, and therefore not have the confusion that typically can happen when we start to go into the idea of the ORAC scale, and it's like my berry's bigger than your berry, right? It's confusing. One of the most researched compounds that we've been working with is, it's actually not an ingredient. It's something that's formed from a certain class of vegetables, specifically broccoli, but not just broccoli. It's actually researched originally at Johns Hopkins University, some of you may be aware. And that research from there has now been lit up around the world. And the reason for that is that sulforaphane activates over 200 genes that are responsible for cellular defense. Right? We're talking about producing your own glutathione, right? Activating the master antioxidant in the body. But why it's so important is that in addition to that, it's also activating the detoxification enzymes. And as we know, you can neutralize an antioxidant, a free radical, but unless you've got this other mechanism of detoxification working in balance, we've actually got a challenge still that's only going to re-emerge. And so sulforaphane now has over 1,000 clinical papers that actually are showing that there's a range of different conditions, from prostate to breast cancer, right the way through to autism or otherwise, and the research is compelling. Go to PubMed.org, type in sulforaphane, and there's boom, 50 new studies every week. It's just lighting up. Why? Because what they've become fascinated with not just Johns Hopkins, but the University of Queensland in Australia, University of Tokyo, and many other institutions around the world, are looking at what this mechanism's truly doing to interrupt the disease process. Why? Because if we elevate not just the gene expression, but we know that with our products, introducing the bioscalar fields into the product, have actually introduced coherence. So the body is more able to function at a gene expression level anyway. So again, kids, it's just a simple little scoop, add to water. You can go and try some in Dr. Sandra's room, which is directly out the door, but in the far right-hand corner there's a separate room if you haven't gone and experienced the the cube, which is the bioscalar technology in there, do yourself a favor and chill out for a bit. It's really fabulous technology. That is also where you can go and try a taste of the product as well. You know, one of the great taste, you know, there's nothing artificial in the product, but when you have kids be the last word in whether or not they take a product, kids love it. And if you've got a child that can actually enjoy the taste of it, in fact, asking for the product, that's a good thing because it actually helps parents get additional nutrients in the body. But when we start to get feedback from school that Johnny and Susie are actually paying attention and they're not as disruptive, we know it's actually having an effect at kind of a systemic level and the behavioral level that is really difficult just to say, here's the study. But we know why, because when a child is alleviated from the stress at that level, they're more pleasant human beings, right? One of the other products that we developed, again based on Nobel Prize winning research with regard to nitric oxide production in the body, and this is because cardiovascular disease is epidemic on the planet. And cardiovascular disease isn't just a disease of the heart, it's really about the transport system of nutrients as well and toxins out of the body. So we need to pay attention to it, but it's also most nitric oxide products that can be ingested tend to elevate nitric oxide levels, which is a vasodilator, in the body for about 2 hours. Our product has been tested over 12 hours, so you've got real true protection, you know, through the day, and you can have another scoop at night. So it's a cool product that helps to not only improve and enhance energy and stamina, but from a health and wellness perspective or a sports performance perspective, it goes right the way down to peripheral circulation. As we know with diabetes, peripheral circulation becomes a big deal if you want to keep all your fingers and digits, right? So these are important things. The Celebrate was another innovation that was based on plant stem cells that have also been tested in a particular botanical from France that is a macroalgae that's been grown in a bioreactor because it's a bit hard to go and scoop it up out of the ocean, take into consideration contamination possibilities. And there's one particular test that was done with one of the compounds that actually affect the SIRT1 gene, which is the gene of longevity, and that shows up as being activated, as well as SOD, catalase, glutathione peroxidase. So pretty exciting. The tests that show up with gene reset, as we just mentioned there, restoring cellular function, rebuilding and renewing the cell matrix. The other aspect of things that we looked at with product development was the fact that we've got cell phones prolifically used in our society. So the little chip has been bioscalar enhanced, and we've seen a lot of these different products around today. Our products have been tested. There's not just blood tests and live blood analysis with dark field microscopy, but one of the other areas of research that came out in 2015 from the University of Virginia, if you look at the top left-hand image there, was actually they finally found that the lymphatic system didn't stop at the neck. It actually completely enwraps the brain. Now, this was also said that it would change the way we think about Alzheimer's and dementia. Why? Because if the lymphatic system is part of the immune system as well, we also had to look at what's happening there. Is it a neural problem or is it a toxicity problem? It's actually a toxicity problem and a neural problem, but one leads to the other, inflammation. You see, that research there's breakthrough. Hasn't even reached the mainstream yet, but it's pivotal. We found that obviously with kids today, the use of cell phones, one of the top scientists and surgeons in Australia is saying we have an epidemic of brain surgeries on 12 and 13-year-olds. We have a challenge, but we have technology that can help alleviate it. Thermal imaging before, during, and after use, introducing the technology as well. So we think it's a kind of an important technology, particularly with the fact that it's not what we see that's a challenge, it's now this ever-increasing unseen, or what we refer to as a hidden menace with all of the other modern technology. So Resonate, as we mentioned, is that fabulous little product, the medallion, that we've introduced to undertake a range of different factors, from charging your water, and it can be measured with the shift. You can put the medallion next to a banana and another banana without, and you can see how one banana deteriorates and one doesn't, because its field has been maintained in coherent state. So it'll actually preserve fruit and vegetables much longer. Q-SPAR, just wrapping it up, was an innovation taking into consideration that how do we address stress at a true systemic level. So we worked with a team of scientists that developed what was referred to as holophonic sound. And we also further bioscalar infuse that sound, so when somebody's listening to these audio files, what it does is that they simply breathe and they listen and they get affected at a gene expression level. Now the test showed that what we have is a way of being able to influence not just the cell permeability, but also mitochondrial function and also oxygen pressure at a cell level with sound, with audio, with bioscalar, and it changes. Why? We've had somebody that was involved with one of the tests who was a traumatic brain injury. His brain was fried from traditional medicine, and within the month, Dr. Luba was lit up because she said, you can't change these markers, and there's over 350 markers that she tested, just quickly. Some of them take a long time to shift, and this was an introduction. So we developed an app including SmartSound. We don't have time to go through that today, but you could certainly check out the website, listen to it. We have, again in the room, an opportunity to listen to the audio, and there are audios that will elevate mood, focus and concentration, called accelerate, right the way down to meditate, to zen out, or even to sleep, juvenate. So these are all audio programs that are designed to affect different brain states, and we incorporated that for better sleep, reducing stress, etc. So it's really just been a great joy to work with Dr. Sandra in bringing together some products that we believe are not only biochemically functional, but also energetically restoring as well, and that's really where clarity is. We have a range of different ways that people can use it. You can go to the website. We go by word of mouth because it's on a website. How else would we share a message like this? On a store shelf? Hardly. So I really like to say thank you very much for your attendance and your hospitality. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neville.